Lois Lane, issue 12, Greg Rucka writing with Mike Perkins on the art, and this is wrapping up this 12-issue story. Connor can finally tag back in after, I think, 3 issues?
He gets hot tag. Connor gets a hot tag.
Was it 3?
Yeah, it was 3.
It was Young Justice.
What was before Young Justice?
Supergirl.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, I spoke on Young Justice.
Okay. So
oh, we said something mildly negative about Bendis, so Connor chimed right in.
Jumped right in. Yeah.
Hey, I wasn't actually that negative. I was just questioning.
Okay. To Lois Lane, because I want to get through these, so I want to wrap up. But because I have a lot to say about this issue. So I got to ask you guys where this goes and what it does with the multiverse stuff. Do you feel like it's taken away from Lois's focus on the book?
Yes.
Okay.
I like everything that this does with the multiverse. Let me just put that out there. I like all of that stuff. But this is not the book I was promised for those first 3 or 4, 5 issues of the run. Where it was all about, Lois, the journalism, what it means, the story. And then by the end, it's like, I mean, they've tried to kind of bring it back in here at the end, but I don't think it really lands as well as it should, because we've just spent 3 issues, 4 issues doing all the other stuff entirely with...
I mean, it's kind of like it ends 2 stories, because we have the big ending to the journalist side is her, everyone goes quiet as she walks into the Daily Planet, and she has that scene with Perry, and you get some of the media reactions to what was revealed, and it feels very political. It feels like it's paralleling a lot of real world events, and then you have the TV interview which talks about her book, and her book, which has been written, and Bendis has been talking about her writing this book for ages, and it turns out the book she's been writing has been about the multiverse and about parallel universes, and how some people do have faint memories of an alternate life, and how to sort of deal with that process and stuff, which I think is a really interesting concept. Now, I don't know if I necessarily disagree that maybe having them both be smashed together like this
I think it feels like it should have been 2 6-issue arcs rather than one big 12-issue story.
Yeah, I could see that. Because I actually like both stories. I actually really enjoy both stories. So, and I enjoyed the stuff because when they're getting the final bit of evidence they need for her story, Montoya and Alicia are in Kadim, I think, was it?
Yeah, Kadim.
Yeah.
No, they're
Chechnya.
Yeah.
Chechnya, there you go.
Chechnya, not Kadim.
Kadim
was in Batman the Outsiders.
Yeah, I knew it was in. I knew it was a comic. This would be Kadim.
Yeah.
I wasn't just pulling that out of my ass.
Yeah. No, I know.
So they, they're in this sort of, they're having this kind of fun relationship bonding as they're in a gunfight, and it was fun stuff. I think this issue is full of enjoyable moments. It's kind of a weird final issue to this book because of what we've already said about it feeling like 2 different stories put together. So it's kind of this weird thing where I'm really glad this book existed, and I really liked reading all the issues of it. But it's kind of a clunky.
Once you get to the end, you could see how you'd rather edit it into a slightly different format and get a better end product, right?
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, I would love to hear Rucka's reasoning for how this book was structured and how it's kind of smashed these 2 stories together. Because, like you say, it could have just been, Lois. You could have, Lois Lane 1 through 6 could have been the journalist stuff, and then you could have had a second arc, like a sequel called Lois Lane: Kiss of Death. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, and that's where I feel that I've seen some criticism online that this got so away from Lois as a journalist, and I'm like, well, we haven't really had that since her dad died, right? So it really is like 2 6-issue arcs.
But that's the problem, is the first arc didn't have a conclusion. It just paused because we got interrupted by the Kiss of Death stuff and did all of that, and then smashed the conclusion to that first arc in here with the conclusion to the second arc at the same time.
But I also think tying Lois to kind of current events doesn't make it that definitive Lois story. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you can't hand this to someone now and go, this is the Lois story to make someone understand.
Yeah,
and I don't think you could do it even before the Kiss of Death stuff. I just think it was Rucka had a lot on his mind, because he would do this in Lazarus as well. But in Lazarus, he would keep it towards the back matter.
It's tied.
He had an outlet for it.
It's tied to too much stuff even from the get-go, because I think if you wanted this to be Lois's Harleen, and not necessarily as an origin, I'm not saying set like at the start of her career, I just mean like, okay, as long as you have a basic understanding of Superman and that, okay, Lois is, either married or not, but you have a basic understanding of what Lois's role is in Superman's world. Okay, you can hand this story to anyone and say, here's your standalone Lois Lane story that's a really good journalist
Batman
story.
or Superman stories that I just, you go, right, okay, what can you hand someone and go, this is a good Batman story that anyone can just be your first Batman story, or Superman. And the first few issues felt like it could have been that Lois story. I think once we got to dealing with Superman, revealing his identity, I think it kind of lost that element of this could have been someone's first Lois book.
It's too in continuity, yeah. It's an continuity book.
And that's my take on it, and I can understand where people would think that, but at the same time, I'm looking at this as for what it is, and to me, Lois is the curator of the DCU, right? We see a lot of stuff through her perspective, not just being married to Superman, but being the preeminent reporter. So the fact now that we're getting her involved with the weird multiversal stuff with Renee and Kiss of Death and what that means for trauma and going forward, is that this is all stuff that we have to live with, right? It almost ties into what Bendis was doing with Bart. And I think it helps too that I read these back to back, and that, yes, if this is what we're doing, if DC's doing with the multiverse, is like, yeah, all of this stuff happened and our people and our characters remember it, but it's not exactly their origins, right? It's something that gets echoed. I like that Lois is the one that brings attention to that, because she is our kind of viewpoint to, the DC universe as the human, she's not a member of the JLA, but she hangs out with them, right?
I think that's why I go back to it. It feels like two arcs. Is I like that story. I like Lois being the one having that story. I just wish we'd finished off the first arc before we did this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I still want more. I'll take a sequel series to this, but I think going back to the point about being able to hand someone the story, though, I feel like she's not the only DC character that has that problem. Like, I think even some of the bigger characters have that problem. I don't think there's a Flash story you can hand. I think all the Flash stuff that's great is all big runs. I don't think there's like a single Flash trade where you can go, here's a Flash story that will get you into the Flash.
Yeah, like I love Blitz.
Maybe slightly.
No. I will not have you say that doesn't work entirely on its own. As this is, here you go, here's a story on its own.
I mean, it does, but I mean, it's all in flashback with him being a kid, so I don't necessarily think it works in the same way that a lot of the other books we're talking about do. I don't think it does. I think it works in the context of if reading all of Wally's story. Even Green Lantern, I think for the most part, I mean, Secret Origin works to a point, but even that's supposed to be read in the middle of the arc. It's not, or the middle of the run. Sorry,
the Hector Hammond stuff.
Yeah.
So that's what I was gonna say about Johns' Flash run is I love Blitz. It's one of my favorite Flash stories of all time. You can't read Blitz without reading up to that point, though, because so much of it is entwined to Hunter Zolomon and his wife.
To the point, Matt, where in my head, like, I mean, obviously if I reread it, I'd be able to do this more confidently. But I actually can't separate a lot. I mean, I love Wally's Flash run, or Johns' Wally Flash run. I mean, I can't separate most of those stories in my head. They all just kind of blend together as one big run to me.
And same with his Green Lantern, or even if we bring it to more modern stuff.
His Green Lantern breaks up a lot more definitively in your head. Structurally, I'm not saying you can like hand someone your Blackest Night and go, here you go. But I think it's a lot clearer in breaking up its parts as a reader.
But I would say
Mike.
At the very least, like Green Lantern like builds to Blackest Night, and then you've got post Blackest Night, so there's at least a big split point in the middle where you
there is
a before and after.
And I do agree with you that not every character has something that you can hand them, but this book, when it started, felt like it was going to be that, and that's exciting in its own right. It was because every character should have one of those books.
Right, and that's where I try to look at stuff for what it is and not what it should be when it comes to stuff like this. And I mean, this is one of my favorite books every time it came out. But I also don't know if it's my continuity bias, right? I love when they do stuff with continuity, and I love that this is Rucka trying to streamline, Renee's version of the question, which he's instrumental in creating, right? Because I went back and read the in between these two issues, I went and read the Books of the Blood, or the 5, whatever that was, that introduced Alicia.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a fine book, but it really requires you to know what had happened to lead up. But this almost caps off that stuff as well. So I feel like what he did with his Wonder Woman, where that was playing with pieces that he had done with before, this was the same. And I could understand the criticism. This went from a Lois book to a Renee book, and I fully understand that criticism there, you know.
Yeah.
But again, I can't separate it to the, you know.
For me, it's just ultimately how it's less than all its parts. Like, you know, it's like I'm building a flat pack chair. All the pieces are really nice. You know, they're nice wood, whatever. And you know, I'm putting them all together, and you know, each issue is, you know, one of these pieces. And I get to the end, and it's like it's kind of missing a support beam, and it kind of just crumbles a little bit if you look at it too hard.
Yeah.
It's kind of how I feel about this series as a whole, where individually, yeah, all really nice work.
Yeah, someone that's fallen through quite a few chairs. I fully get what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, but at the same time, I really enjoyed this, and when they released the, you know, the big deluxe trade, I'm gonna have it for my shelf. Not that I'm gonna lend it out, but again, I love Rucka. I love what he does in this, you know. But yeah, I know it does feel like a capper to his DC work before New 52. You know, like,
yeah, it got a little bit self-referential almost.
Mm-hmm.
Of, like, you know, it got to a point where, again, the first few issues felt really, even us who are, you know, read the vast majority of all the stuff since at least the New 52, right?
Mm-hmm.
In terms of mainline continuity, like we're at least that far. We're kind of on board with most things.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get to this, and I'm like, man, this is going back over a decade, pulling on threads of stuff that I've just not read. And there were points, I think, even the last couple of issues that we spoke about how I get the context of this moment being a big moment and a big, you know, reveal because of what it's doing and the way it's framed, and that was a testament to the art that can manage that. But I definitely felt like I was lacking some of the context and the enjoyment that this should have had because of that. And I definitely felt that once you're referencing books over a decade old, when you're halfway through a series, you know, of this series, when you start introducing that things, it feels a little bit bait and switchy. Like, hey, we got people on board feeling like they are. This is new reader friendly. We've got you all now, and then never mind. And
so again, I do understand that criticism, and it's, you know, it's valid, but it doesn't bother me as much. Because I'm enjoying where it's coming from, because that's exactly my kind of jam, and that.
I get that appeals to some people. It's one thing to say, oh well, this stopped being a Lois book you can hand to anyone as, you know, their first Lois book because it's so tied up in current continuity. That's one thing entirely, because okay, well, at least when we're reading this monthly as we are now, the expectation is we're aware of current continuity at least, so it's fine. It's when it's referencing things from so far back, like 2 reboots ago, that it's like, well, okay, hang on, take a step back.
I like being introduced to a lot of like weird, wacky stuff that I don't get right away. It's kind of, it's one of those things you have to deal with when you start getting into comic books. You know, when you start venturing out of those standalone stories that you can hand to people, and you get things referenced, you hear about things, and it doesn't happen as often as it used to. Although that said, comics surprised me with just how often it still happens. You think after reading for over a decade, it may not happen too much, but it still does fairly frequently, to be honest. They'll whip out some weird character from some run.
There's always blind spots.
And I'll be like, oh, what the hell is this thing? And I think, you know, Rucka maybe wanting to give a capper to a lot of his DC work in this form is kind of interesting. It's maybe a bit personal, and maybe, you know, as for people who have read some of that stuff or care about his work in DC.
But I'd be more on board with it if it was upfront with that's what it was going to be from the start.
Yeah, but then you don't have the surprise though. Like, I mean, imagine the surprise of like some of these characters showing up.
See, this is the thing. I don't even want like specifics, but just if at the start they'd even in like interviews at least, they talk about how, you know, this is capping off like, you know, all elements of all my history at DC, you know, things like that. You know, it's gonna, you know, have these thematic callbacks. I'd have appreciated that at least, I think.
I don't know.
But I do think that would give it away a bit. Like if we knew this was gonna be Renee and Sister Mercy and Jessica Midnight. You know what I mean? The only person that's really missing is Sacha Bordeaux. So like maybe he's got that up his sleeve. I don't know. But
I'm okay with being lied to for a bit to make a surprise work.
Because we're fine with getting worked, Pete. That's part of enjoying one of the art forms.
I was lied to in the sense of, okay, this is what this book is. This is what I'm giving it my money every month. And then, oh, actually, we're actually doing something completely different. But we've kind of got you on board now, so we'll keep taking your money. And it's not until like, well, we're almost at the end now, so well, I'm here, and it's kind of frustrating in that sense. That's where I feel that the lies and the expectation has an impact on. Okay, if I'd known from the start that that's what this story was, and it was going to be calling back to all this stuff, I might not have read it from the start because I'd be like, oh, okay, well, I'd rather not have read the Kappa to Rucka's runs without reading most of that prior stuff.
I thoroughly enjoyed the adventure this went on, and I was, as much as I liked the journalism stuff in the beginning, I can see how Rucka got away from it because maybe tying her to the current events at the time, it adds a date stamp on the book where you kind of want Lois to not be ageless, but you want to be able to tell a story that can take place at any time. And tying it to 2019, 2020, maybe he was just upset with stuff that he was going through, and he had used Lois as a megaphone for that. You know what I mean? But this for what it did, and how Lois comes from, the fact that she has a teenage son and whatnot that was born in between realms. Like I don't know. I think Rucka did the best with what he could. I'm gonna give this an 8.5.
Connor?
I give it a 7.
Yeah, I'm giving it an 8. There you go.